People of Earth, we come in peace.
Welcome to this neighborhood, neighbor.
I am the Martian ambassador.
Des Moines and all of central Iowa, welcome to Mac's World Live. Mac's World is your world. Every day we talk about the issues and topics that matter most to you. And as always, it's your voice we want to hear in Mac's World. So join the conversation by calling 515-244-0077. And now, here's the host of Mac's World Live, J. Michael McCoy.
All right, good afternoon. 7 minutes after the hour, 19th day of January. We are going to date stamp this show because in just a few minutes, Congressman Steve King will be live in our studio. And what a day to have booked Congressman King. Thank you, Andrea, his assistant, for your hard work in doing that. We had no idea that what would transpire has transpired. Let me give you what's going on here in the last, 3 hours. First of all, Ben Carson, 3 of his staff members in a van in Atlantic, Iowa, hit a slick spot or for whatever reason ended up spinning out and rolling over. One of the people in that van is injured to the point where they have been flown to Omaha, Nebraska. Ben Carson has now postponed all of his campaign stops for the remainder of today so he can go to Omaha and be with the family of that harmed, hurt, injured staff member. Now, what does that tell you about Ben Carson?
Yeah.
You know? I mean, we're 2 weeks away from the Iowa caucuses. His polls are doing nothing but going down, and he postpones important campaign stops to go visit the family of a campaign staffer.
Have we ever heard that he's anything but a very decent, sincere individual?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just further evidence of it, Mac.
Second of all, Governor Terry Branstad said he wants Texas Senator Ted Cruz defeated. When Channel 13 News asked him this morning if he wants Cruz, who is currently leading in the polls, to lose, Governor Branstad's answer was yes. Branstad made his comments after addressing a room of alternative energy supporters at the Iowa Renewable Fuel Summit in Altoona. Branstad went on to say, I think it would be very damaging to our state. Iowa's governor said of Cruz's victory. And what is the reason why? Well, Ted Cruz is backed by a lot of big oil. I mean, he's from Texas, for heaven's sakes. He's a senator from Texas.
Sure.
They don't like the fact that Iowa is one of the leading states in the nation on renewable fuels. Not only ethanol, but also wind. We are huge in wind.
Yeah.
And Branstad is afraid's not the right word, but he thinks that if Ted Cruz makes it to the White House, that he may very well end some of the tax advantages that we have in Iowa to produce renewable fuels.
I have a text message, too.
Okay, go ahead, and then we're going to take Mark on the radio.
Okay. It does not surprise me that Branstad would say that about Cruz. Isn't Branstad part of the system? He is probably for Marco Rubio secretly.
By the way, that's the Service Legends Truth text line at 515-809-0993. You can text us. Don't do it while you're driving, please. But you can text us and tell you what you think. You can also call the line that Mark is on, and that's 244-0077, and we can hear your voice because it's your voice we want in Mac's World. All right, let's go to the phones. Mark, how are you today?
Not too bad.
What are you thinking?
Well, I was going to, before I even heard about the accident there and Dr. Carson going to visit his staff member, I told my wife and I, as for myself and her, we're going to caucus for him anyway, whether he's electable by most people's standards or not, because that counter to Hillary Hillary's a person that, well, she left the phone hanging off hook while these guys in Benghazi were getting basically shot at, essentially. They had drones flying overhead. Everybody's watching. They shut the computer screens off. She essentially said so in the hearing that had gone on. Their staff members walked home, went to bed, and everything else. Well, these guys were still under fire. Carson gives me a good example, is like Abraham Lincoln. He left the battlefield to take care of those wounded soldiers there to give them inspiration. I think that kind of moral instinct that he has there, that God has given him, is a good example of what ISIS and all the ideologies of that kind of mindset will be fearful of.
Yeah, and you've got the release of 13 Hours. Have you seen that yet, Mark?
No, I haven't seen it. I had a couple of friends that were telling me about it long before it even got to be news. They're still active duty in the service, and they had let me know things that had gone on during that same time frame. So none of this was much of a shocker when those three individuals were interviewed several times on different radio stations and television stations. So,
Mark, do you think the Benghazi event is going to unravel Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign?
I think it's going to be more than that. I think when they finally get through all these emails and different things, there's going to be a lot of different issues that have come up, both how she got a lot of campaign finance activities while she was in service and things like that too.
There's just so much, isn't there?
I think she's a criminal straight through. Her old man is a good example too. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
All right, Mark, hang on for just a second. Tom, wasn't there another news story out today? Something with the emails with Hillary?
Yes, we were talking about that off the air. There seems like there's even another news story that some of the emails that she was receiving on her private server were even over and above what we would consider top secret. I mean, they were some of the deepest information. So it continues to drip out, and I think we want to talk with Congressman King when he comes in regards to some of his thoughts and what maybe he's hearing around Washington on those possibilities.
Yeah, and Marco Rubio said on the campaign trail the other day, and I'm not quoting here, I'm not getting this verbatim, but it was something, if we can't trust Hillary Clinton to operate her email properly when it comes to national security, how can we ever give her the football? How can we ever make her commander-in-chief? Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
That's exactly what I was trying to allude to. She's at best, she's an idiot. I don't know what other way to say that, and there is no better way to express it than that. If she can't conduct simple email, and that's most 5-year-olds handle that, I don't know how she's going to deal with anything more serious than that.
Well, if she's an idiot, she's also a very successful corrupt idiot, because after walking out,
let's not underestimate this woman,
and formed the Clinton Foundation, she and her husband have made hundreds of millions of dollars. Some of those millions of dollars were made with issues in front of the State Department by foreign governments. And so the cronyism and the corruption is rampant. And I think, again, if it were a Republican that even got close to something like that. Clinton Foundation was formed, guys, with the ostensible purpose of doing all this charitable work, and like 10% of the money that goes to Clinton Foundation finds its way there. 90% of it goes into their pockets. So
that's all organized crime. I mean, it's the same scenario that goes on, collecting a little bit from everybody. It's always been out there. And a person doesn't have to be a rocket scientist to run something like that.
Now, here's another piece of breaking news. I guess it doesn't say breaking. Well, afternoon update. This is from the New York Times. I don't like them, but they're usually fairly accurate. The Supreme Court of the United States of America has agreed to hear the challenge to Obama's immigration actions. Now, understand, they're not going to agree to hear it if they don't think there's some validity to it.
Well, and of course, the mainstream media says that both sides were heartened that the Supreme Court agreed to hear it.
26 states filed.
I can't imagine that the legitimate sentiment on the Obama side is, oh, goody, the Supreme Court gets to hear this.
Yeah, I can't hear that. All right, let's welcome Congressman Steve King into the studio. Congressman, how are you?
I am doing fine. Happy to be back in the studio here.
Blessed to have you here today, sir. Thank you very much. We've got a break coming up in just about a minute, so I don't want to get too much stuff started. I'm assuming you've heard Sarah Palin has endorsed Donald Trump. The governor said this morning, basically anybody but Cruz. And by the way, and if you think I say something that isn't correct, let me know.
No,
okay,
you're good so far, Mac.
The Supreme Court.
Actually, neither one of those things are good, but you're right so far.
Well, I like to be accurate. Maybe that's why I'm not the number one talk show host in the world, because I just don't like to fan the flames. You've got Ben Carson, whose staffers were in a bad accident over in Atlantic. You haven't heard this. 3 people in a van lost control of the van. The van rolled. 1 person has been taken to Omaha Hospital. Ben Carson has canceled or postponed all of his events tonight, and he's gone to the hospital. And Jill King said something that I think makes a lot of sense. I didn't think of it. He is a doctor. I mean, he is a medical doctor. He can probably help there. And you've got the United States Supreme Court agreeing to hear Obama's stuff. Wow. What a day to be in Iowa, right?
It's a very exciting state to be in. There's no doubt about it. And our thoughts and prayers go out to the Carson team, and that the good medical care and miracles can happen over there in the hospital.
Yeah.
That's a tragedy. I just know how that must feel to Ben Carson. He's doing the right thing.
Yeah. Well, and and that's the kind of guy he is. You know, you're the only one that can answer this. How would you go on and go be out there stumping when one of your guys is laying in the hospital when he was out there working for you, right?
Mac, you can't at all. You just simply it's not a hard decision to make. It's just hard to have to make it.
All right, Congressman Steve King in the studio, 244-0077. Those are the lines if you'd like to talk to him. The Service Legends Truth text line is also open at 809-0993. It's your voice we want to hear live here in Mac's World on 99.3 The Truth.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
"21 minutes after the hour on the 19th day of January, we will date and timestamp this because literally things are changing as we sit here. I love live radio, and this is why. When we booked Senator King or Congressman King a couple of days ago, we had no idea that we would have one of the largest endorsements, one of the most powerful endorsements for Ted Cruz sitting in our studio. We also have news. I don't know if you've heard about this, but the UK, the Parliament right now is voting on whether to ban Donald Trump from the UK.
I watched some of that debate last night on the British Parliament, and I've been in there where they have the expression "toe the mark."
Yeah,
that's where that comes from. There's a line of paint along on either side in the House of Commons, and you can't put your foot across that line, and that mark is far enough apart that they can't reach each other with their swords.
Oh.
That's the kind of debate they have in the House of Commons, and then the Prime Minister has to sit there and take Prime Minister's questions, which are shots from everywhere. It is a very exhilarating thing to watch, but the Brits to decide that they don't like some of the statements made by a candidate for president here, I think that's a mistake on their part. That can't help if Donald Trump becomes president of the United States.
Now, Steve, I understand from a statute standpoint, they had to get over 100,000 signatures on the petition. They got 600,000, and then they had no choice but to debate this issue. Now, how they'll decide, I don't know. But I think from a statutory standpoint, the article I read last night said they're forced now, with that many signatures on this petition, to debate the issue.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I didn't know that clearly, although I had heard some to that effect. I wonder if all the signatures that start with Muhammad counted.
I wonder. I'm going to say, how many of those are Muslims?
I actually had a fellow in my office a few years ago whose name was Mohammed Jihad, and for some reason I just don't think I want him as my pilot.
Steve, what's the real count on the Muslims that come in here quietly through the Obama administration? I've heard 200,000 aside from the Syrians are coming in. Is that the kind of number you're hearing?
It is the numbers I'm hearing, but I get some of that information from the press. So, but I think it's the most reliable numbers we have. When we ask the administration, it's awfully hard to get information out of them. You almost have to go find a report, extrapolate the data out of it, and then conclude the government report is such and such. But it looks to me like if the president has essentially announced that he's going to increase the numbers of refugees coming into America, and they're almost all going to come out of the Muslim countries. And we brought legislation. I've sponsored it, and Ted Cruz has, and some others, to simply stop immigration from coming from those terrorist-producing countries, including Syria and Iraq, but multiple other countries. Yemen would be another example.
Okay, so you would focus not on the faith, but on the countries and the areas that they're being derived from. A terrorist stronghold we should not allow anybody in just because the odds are bad for us, right?
The odds are bad. And how do you determine someone's religion? I mean, if you ask someone, "I won't let you into America if you're a Muslim. Are you a Muslim?" I don't know that they're going to tell the truth every time. And I thought about a few other methods of discernment here, but most of those would not be for radio consumption. Although I am an advocate for pork.
All right, Congressman Steve King is in the studio as we speak today on a day that's got a lot of news going around. 809-0993 is the Service Legends Truth text line, and Bob Montserrat has some text he wants to share with us.
I have a text. It says, "Please tell Steve thank you for his strong pro-life stance at State of the Union," from Ethan, his constituent in Ames.
Yeah, you left a seat empty. Mm-hmm. Right? Go ahead and tell the story.
Well, thank you, Ethan, for making that point. This is something that accumulated over the years, and I'd sat there too many times already listening to lectures from the president. Justice Alito wouldn't take it anymore, neither would a couple of the other justices. And when the president announced that he was going to have an empty seat next to the First Lady to honor those who are victims of gun violence who no longer have a voice, and I saw the tears for the Sandy Hook victims, which we all should have tears and prayers for them and their families. That was appropriate. But as far as we know, he's never shed a tear for the lives of the nearly 60 million unborn who never had a voice, not no longer have a voice, but never had a voice. And then it echoed in my ears the words of the great Henry Hyde. And it's actually, I was on his funeral program where he said that there are voices that have never been heard in this world that will be heard clearly and beautifully in the next world. That's the voices of the unborn, and it was time to go to the members' chapel and pray for them during the President's State of the Union address rather than sit there and be lectured to and see that level of messaging that he does to the rest of the country.
Well, good job. I mean, congratulations. Not only what is it the right thing to do in that situation during the State of the Union, but what a wonderful thing to do to show that you're pro-life. Well, and that doesn't budge.
It doesn't, Mac, and it wasn't a strategized thing to do. I mean, I had thought about it a little bit, and I knew I was going to leave my guest seat empty for that reason, maybe a day or so in advance. And I thought about going to the members' chapel, but I didn't really know I was going to do that until I walked onto the floor, and then I started to play this through in my mind, and I just thought, I cannot do this again. I'm going to go to the chapel.
Good for you. Do you get good support from your fellow congressmen, even if it's not public? Do they come up and pat you on the back, or do you get some bad ill for that?
I've got no pushback from not only from members of Congress, but I had several that came to me and said, "Why didn't you let me know? I'd have gone with you."
Yeah.
And then from the public, it has been 100% support of all the phone calls that we received, and we received a lot of them. They were 100% in favor of what I did.
Oh, you mean you didn't hear from Dr. Jill Meadows, head of Planned Parenthood?
Well, she didn't call my office for some reason.
Did you see that open letter she wrote? She said that she is doing, I'm quoting.
This is in the Register.
Yeah, this was in the Register. That she is doing God's will by helping women have abortions. That's the quote, God's will.
That's just diabolical. To take that. And I saw tweets come out that were from Planned Parenthood that said it was disrespectful for me not to sit in there and listen to the president lecture us. And these are the people that dismember babies and sell body parts.
Yeah.
And they say praying for the unborn is disrespectful. There's another example of it, Jill Meadows' statement. That is what we're dealing with. And you remember the videos, the Planned Parenthood videos, when you saw people sitting there having a glass of wine and cackling about what they were doing.
Well, you didn't get the memo, Steve. That was taken out of context. You see, those things were edited and taken out of context. You didn't get that memo.
No, I didn't get that memo, but I thought I watched the unedited version so that I could see it within context. And when the Lamborghini, I need a Lamborghini. So it is this country is outraged. We were just not outraged enough to shut the funding off to Planned Parenthood. And now think here's another equation that goes on. Barack Obama's Obamacare mandates that there be contraceptives in everybody's health insurance policy, including the Little Sisters of the Poor and the celibate priests, and the list can go on. And so we have people, many of them, who lament that the birth level in America is down below replacement rate. Mm-hmm. So in order to fix that, we have to bring a lot of illegals in who reproduce more. We heard that actually from Jeb Bush and others, and it's a true statement as far as that goes. So we are subsidizing contraceptives, and we're subsidizing abortion, and then we're replacing the birth loss by bringing in people that'll have more babies until they have access to contraceptives and abortion. It is a bizarre thing to see this country that we're so topsy-turvy and contradictory in our own policies.
Well, it's a bizarre thing, Steve, when you look at the demographic numbers of the abortions. I mean, it's the minorities that argue for the elevation of individual minority rights, and yet what's the numbers? At least 3-1 that the proportion of a black child to be murdered inside the womb versus a white. It goes back to the origination. The founder of Planned Parenthood. She
Margaret
was
Sanger.
Eugenicist, and she openly advocated for the elimination, or at least the reduction, of what she considered mongrel minorities.
Well, it was, and that's a quote, I think, from her directly, mongrel minorities. And so that's consistent with the theme of Planned Parenthood. If you look at where they set up their clinics, many of them are in the inner city, and that brings about a disproportionate effect, too. So you've got to cry for these inner cities. I made a trip up to Detroit, and I went through the full tour there with a super high crime rate that they've had.
Oh, yeah.
They have a terrific chief of police today who's starting to turn that around,
Good.
James Craig. I spent 2 hours there just like this talking back and forth with him. Then he sent his corporal to put me through the tour. The inner cities are going to be awfully hard to put back together, but they've been, many of it, destroyed by the welfare program.
Congressman Steve King in the studio this afternoon. Tom Coates is here. The Truth text line is available at 809-0993. Frank's supposed to ask a question, but I'll bet you 20 cents it's a statement.
Well,
and then he'll end it with, and what do you think, Congressman?
No. I was just going to mention to you guys, if you've heard the spin that the leftists and progressives like Bradshaw is putting on it, that they're not selling body parts, they're simply being reimbursed for it. If you guys remember the old Andy Griffith episode where the sheriff Andy caught the roadside peddlers, and he was questioning them why they was selling. They said, "Who, us selling? We're giving our produce away," and people are so grateful they're just giving donations. So that's what Planned Parenthood does, is they're giving these body parts, and they're so grateful they're just reimbursing for it.
Good point, Frank.
It's the cost of production, they say. I think that clip by Andy Griffith would be a good one to run up alongside. You might get that to go viral when this debate picks back up again.
Absolutely. All right. Now, you have endorsed Ted Cruz.
Yes.
You have a great relationship with Branstad. Branstad has come out and basically said anybody but Cruz, because of the renewable fuels is the estimate. That's the guess. Because Iowa is huge into renewable fuels, and Ted Cruz's campaign has driven a lot. The money is driven a lot by some oilmen down in Texas. How do you do that? I mean, I just want to know how you do that.
How I endorse Cruz?
Well, no.
Branstad makes a statement that he made.
Yeah, as a congressman sitting in the middle between the governor
I see.
and your candidate, I'm just curious. What do you do?
Well, it's not my favorite place to be, of course, but I'd like to have had the governor think about that before he spoke. But here's what I've watched. First of all, I know Ted Cruz, and I know each one of these candidates, most of them personally and professionally. We've evaluated their policies and their convictions, and I've looked them in the eye. I've tested them, and it came down to this. I am a full-spectrum constitutional Christian conservative. I want a president like that who will restore the pillars of American exceptionalism, and one of those foundations is restore the Constitution itself. There is so much at stake. The destiny of America is at stake, and I support renewable fuels, but that is not the only thing. And anybody that goes to caucus and says, I don't care what happens to America, it can fall down around our ears just as long as we can hang on to the RFS up until 2022, doesn't even have a vision for where the renewable fuels industry needs to be, let alone the destiny of America. And so let's put this all into the package together, and then consider Ted Cruz's policy on renewable fuels, which is he wants to eliminate all subsidies for petroleum. And at the same time, he has to accept the idea of ratcheting down the RFS over 5 years and eliminate the 10% blend wall, the E10 blend wall, direct the EPA to conduct tests on fuel efficiency that actually reflect the benefits of ethanol. And they're not doing that today. And direct the Justice Department to enforce the antitrust laws that are on the books, Sherman, Clayton, FEC. All of that is good, and it will increase our share of a corn ethanol market from 15 billion on up to, according to Dave Vandergrind, who's built more plants in Iowa than anybody else. He thinks it goes to 24 or 25 billion gallon. So Cruz's policy in the long run is better than any other candidate. I'm confident in that because they don't have one.
Why doesn't Branstad know that? I mean, why would he throw out that?
But his son Eric has been pushing this since November.
He's part of a bipartisan group of renewable fuel supporters. They've held news conferences, run radio ads confronting Cruz, et cetera, et cetera.
And they didn't start out with the truth, and they have not yet moved to the truth. And when you allege that a seated United States senator is a hypocrite, a liar, that he wants to hurt farmers in order to line his own pockets, all of those things, of course, are false. And when you assign someone a motive and then you attack them for the motive that you've assigned to them, there's no defense for anybody for that.
Steve, I heard you attack recently for much a similar thing on another radio station.
Right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want you to know my car manufacturer tells me I should not run ethanol. I fill it up with ethanol every time, 30,000 miles, and it runs just fine. Coming back live here on The Truth.
Car manufacturer.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs,
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
.438, 22 minutes before the top of the hour. Ask Hank. Hank, the Bible Answer Man, at 5 o'clock. 1-888-ASK-HANK. Nationwide, worldwide show. Call now. I know you're thinking, it's 20 minutes. No, call now. It takes about that long. All right, we are blessed to have Congressman Steve King in the studio today, along with Tom Coates. Frank is producing. Bob Montserrat is watching the Service Legends Truth Text line at 809-0993. Also, Paul is on the studio line at 244-0077. Paul, you're live with Congressman King. How are you today, Paul?
Not too bad. How you guys doing today?
Good. What's your question for the congressman?
Well, the congressman, the question I had to ask for him is we have a lot of farm animals and everything else right here, a lot of farms out here. Besides wind and solar and that kind of thing, has anybody really started investing in the methane and recouping the biogas? Because everybody gets all upset when you mention methane, global warming. The biogas recovery on that for generation of electricity. It's more dependable. You got everything right there. All the byproducts are being used up, and the waste that comes out of there is a fertilizer.
Well, about that. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. As far as I know, here in Iowa, there isn't a lot of that going on. There's a little bit that's taking place, and I think that industry is not yet to the place where it's going to be industrialized. If they can do that and see a path to do that in the marketplace, then there's opportunity. And I'm hearing things such as conversions of methane into ethanol, for example.
Yeah.
So that's one of the paths that you can follow. And so I just encourage people, let's keep developing technology. We've done a great job of it here. It's about 1978.
Yeah, we really have.
It is. We're number one in the in the country, and especially the 4th congressional district in renewable energy. If you measure the composite of it, and we're right up there at or near the top in wind and in ethanol and biodiesel. We're number one. If we can do that with methane or methanol, good. And I think that we need to have vehicles coming out of Detroit and other places in the country that have the capability of utilizing fuel that otherwise is not available to us in the pump.
I mean, when I called my car manufacturer, they said, "Oh, don't ever use ethanol. Don't ever use ethanol." And I talked to a buddy of mine, a farmer back in Nebraska that I went to high school with. He was like, "Baloney, you put it in there. 30,000 miles later, haven't had a problem."
Steve, you're quite the expert on energy. You're very well researched. I'm thinking that 50 to 60% of our electricity is generated by coal. Am I far off now?
That would seem to be a pretty
I think
close
50
number
to
to me,
60.
Tom.
Now, this administration, through their emissaries in the EPA, have been working hard and overtime to try to put the coal industry out of business. Saying that we can do solar and wind and these other types of things. I don't think there's any chance in any time in the near future, maybe not in my life, that we're going to be able to totally do away with the coal industry, and yet that's the way they're going. They want to bankrupt every coal company in this country, put them out of business, and rely on what? Maybe doubling or tripling the price of a kilowatt hour generated in this country. They also don't want nuclear. Nuclear has also been very competitive, and yet we can't build a new nuclear plant in this country for what, 30 years now?
It's at least that, and you're right on the coal, and this one of the things that Barack Obama promised back in 2008 when he said that under his policy that the cost of electricity would necessarily skyrocket, and he essentially said it would be next to impossible to build a new coal plant. That's been true. They tried that at Marshalltown, and they had the best configuration you could ask for. They could not get past this administration to get it built. Interesting thing. I'm on the bus with Ted Cruz a little over a week ago, and he's writing an op-ed on energy renewable fuels. And I had been working on this white paper that is a big, broader document under all of that. And I said that I believe that when he put the list of all the energy in there that he wants to compete, that he had left out coal and nuclear. And he looked down and he said, "No, I didn't leave it out." And I looked back through the document. There were two competing documents. One it wasn't in, the other what it was in. But the article he was writing, he wrote it in ink pen. That came out of his head. He didn't want to have a statement that named every energy and not include coal and nuclear.
Good.
So all energy all the time. I like that. That's where I am.
Well, natural gas has become very competitive with the drop in the price of in fact, natural gas has led crude oil and its byproducts on the downside. And so the kilowatt hour generated from natural gas right now is, I think, last I saw, was even more competitive than the nuclear, which traditionally has been one of the most competitive areas to generate a
Frank,
kilowatt hour.
Do you have a comment about the renewable fuels?
Yeah, well, yes. I'm sure Representative King has seen this movie, Pandora's Promise. It's by committed leftists who say the only way, and they're tree-hugging environmentalists to boot, says that nuclear is the only way to go for the future.
Well, I wouldn't discount, Frank, I wouldn't discount the future on this thing as far as nuclear is concerned either. I mean, we had the French that were up to 78% of their electricity generated by nuclear. I've sat over in Germany and looked at Angela Merkel while she's telling us that we're going to get up to something like 80% of our energy is going to be renewable energy. And how are you going to do that? How are you going to generate the electricity? Well, we'll do it with hydroelectric power. And you're not going to be building new dams in Germany. No, they want to buy it from places like Finland and Norway. But in the end, they're opposed to nuclear, but they're buying nuclear electricity across the line from France.
Across the land. All right.
So let's have more of it all the time, and nuclear needs to be a component, so does coal.
From the great 4th District of Iowa, Congressman Steve King is in the studio. We're following 4 stories today. Number 1, Sarah Palin has endorsed Trump. Number 2, Ben Carson has postponed his live appearances today and this afternoon and this evening after a car accident involving 3 of his staffers. He is in Omaha now as a doctor. It's a good place to be. Number 3, Governor Branstad, because of the renewable fuels, has basically said anybody but Trump.
But Cruz.
Or, I'm sorry, anybody but Cruz.
I was going to let that go.
I knew you were. Thanks, Tom. And the UK is currently thinking about banning Trump because he wanted to put a ban on Muslims. Tamara Scott, you know Tamara, she texts me, it's disingenuous for Britain to fuss about Trump's possible vetting the entry of Muslims from dangerous countries when they are apparently threatening to deport Muslim women simply because they don't know the language. Wow.
That's a pretty powerful statement, Tamara.
Well, Tamara is pretty powerful.
She is. She's a great friend, too. I made a trip in our first week in November, around 7th, 11th of November, over into those parts of the world. This is an epic human migration pouring into Europe. And there's a link on a website that shows these little dots of white light that show up wherever as many as 25 to 50 migrants decide to start moving towards Europe. And you watch that, and you can just watch those lights converge on Germany, on Sweden, on Denmark. And so I went over to Kurdistan, into Erbil. I went to the refugee centers there and into Turkey, in and out of Turkey, looking for Christian refugees. There's a whole network that have built over the years of people over there that I trust. But then from there, I went to Serbia, Croatia, and then, Hungary, Serbia, and Croatia, where they built two fences between Hungary and Serbia, Hungary and Croatia. The fences worked. They redirected all that traffic, but I watched as they were loading 1,000 people on a train, moving that train, pull up another train. That goes on all day over there, just pouring into Europe.
If we've
got
Muslim
men,
I didn't think we had any Christian refugees. They can't find their way in here through this administration. They've virtually all been Muslims, Congressman. You must be wrong. They really no Christian refugees looking for a home anywhere, right?
You know, I tried to find Christian refugee camps, and we couldn't go to a Christian refugee camp because the other Christians in that part of the world take them in. That's true in Istanbul. It's true in Erbil. It's true across there. There was one Christian family in a camp of 5,000, and many Christians are boarded on the boats to go across the Mediterranean with Muslims, and a good number of times that boat's docks with only Muslims left on it. They get thrown overboard.
Good point.
I want to honor your time because I'd love to have you for another 12 minutes. But
me too.
I know you need to go. So here's a question I have for you. If you could share it with me, what are you going to say to Branstad when you see him eyeball to eyeball?
Take a look at Cruz's ethanol policy. Take a look at the misinformation that's been perpetrated by the ARF.
But the toothpaste is out of the tube.
Yeah, and so here's. I don't want to unload everything on Governor Branstad.
Sorry, you only
now.
have 10 seconds. So.
If I have 10 seconds, I'll say this. Somebody's not telling the truth here.
Okay.
It's Ted Cruz is telling the truth. I am. And Iowans will have to take a look at this and decide who they trust and who they believe. Is it the Branstads or is it me, for example? That's what I would say.
4th District. I love him, Congressman Steve King. Thank you for being here this afternoon. Honor you. I love you. Thank you for being an Iowan. We're coming back. Tom and I and Frank and Bob will wrap this thing up tightly with a bow. Next, live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Yeah, welcome back. We've been drafted into another version of Tom's World Live, ladies and gentlemen. Mac had to step out with Congressman King for just a minute, and so he said, take the command seat, and so I did. Let me throw this out while we're waiting for Mac to return and talk about this. Off the air, just before Congressman King left, I asked him a question about the Iowa situation. We're looking at a very tight race. The eyes of political America are on Iowa, and we've got a great responsibility. And what they're telling us is that this is a very tight race. I said, the sense is, in fact, tomorrow morning, I've got tickets. Donald Trump is actually coming to Norwalk, Mac. I don't know if you knew that.
I did know that.
But he's coming to Norwalk.
There'll be 10,000 people there.
And
where's he coming in Norwalk?
It's a place called the Right Place, and you have to have a ticket to get in.
How big is it?
It's not 10,000 people big. It's a rather modest size building, and they're selling. They're not selling. They're giving the tickets away, but you have to go on to Eventbrite to get them. And they only do it at one or two at a time. You can't get more than two tickets at a shot.
You got your tickets?
And I do have my tickets.
Okay, good. One for you and one for me?
Yes, you'll have to talk to my wife about.
Oh, good. I'll lose that battle. Hey,
but,
Bob, what do we?
Anyway, my point was, if Trump and Congressman King agreed with this, if Trump runs the table, it will start with Iowa, and there will be no other stopgap on him. If he can be stopped here, if you think he needs to be stopped, then Ted Cruz is the only one that can do it, and that's why some of the main Republican establishment are actually bolstering up or trying to Cruz right now, because they think the only chance that they've got to get one of their establishment candidates is for Trump to stumble in Iowa, start getting him elsewhere, and then it's unlikely they get Jeb Bush up there, but maybe Marco Rubio, somebody that will be much more attuned to their philosophies. So, Mac, you want to come over and take your seat?
No, you just sit right there. Bob Montserrat, the cat in the hat watching the chat, is also watching the Service Legends Truth text line at 809-0993. Bob, what's on the text lines this afternoon?
Well, this comment came in before Congressman King made his statement about the fuels and so forth, but the person here says it must be the end of days. Didn't think I would ever agree with what Sarah Palin or Terry Branstad, would ever say or do, let alone on the same day. So it was somebody commenting that they agreed with.
Yeah. If you're just getting the news from the last 2 or 3 hours, we have 4. Tom, can you slide that paper over to me? We have 4 big stories that literally broke. The first one broke last night, that the Parliament in the United Kingdom is actually considering banning Trump from coming into England because he wants to ban Muslims. And I thought it was interesting that Tamara Scott sent me a text, and let me get it out here for you, saying it's disingenuous for Britain to fuss about Trump's possible vetting the entry of Muslims from a dangerous country when they are apparently threatening to deport Muslim women simply because they don't know the language. The other breaking news is earlier today, Governor Branstad, when asked if he wants Cruz, who is currently leading the Iowa polls, to lose, Governor Branstad said yes. Then he went on to say, I think it would be very damaging to our state. And this, of course, it'd be very damaging to our state to have a Cruz victory on caucus night. This because Cruz has... his message hasn't been completely clear. Congressman King sat right here in this chair I'm sitting in 6 minutes ago and said, somebody's not telling the truth, and I know I'm telling the truth, and I know Ted Cruz is telling the truth. Now, I don't like calling my friend and the governor, I mean, you're in the same book here.
Oh yeah, I am too. But I think that the ethanol industry is the tail wags the dog too often in Iowa politics. In fact, I listened to another very prominent national radio talk show host speak as I drove over to the show today, Mac, and he was castigating Branstad for this. He said, I know for years this is the holy grail in the state of Iowa, and if you don't toe the line on ethanol, they're going to come after you big. And I think Branstad has been I think he's been married to that industry for a long time. I'm not saying there's no positives to it, but I also think that there is a downside to making Iowa its own welfare state. The farmers and the ethanol industry, alternative energies, wind and so forth, have put us in a position where we talk about the welfare recipients in the big inner cities having their hand out and being bought. I think we're in much the same way that our ethanol industry and some of these are trying to dictate to politicians and being bought off by in essence, the federal dollars.
Well, wouldn't you say that Branstad would feel that alternative energy could be his legacy?
He might. He might think that that's part of it. I think the add-on jobs and the add-on industries and agriculture, he's very proud of. I know that. I went to his, when they had the big hula out there at the state fair when he had become the longest-serving governor in American history.
Yeah.
He was very proud of much of these things, and he has a right to be. But I think we're in a unique position, and I think much of the rest of the country will view us as very opportunistic, at the very least, to take advantage of these candidates to make them toe a line, to pledge allegiance to the ethanol industry and to farm subsidies in general before we will pass them on as a potentially presidential candidate. And I think that's self-serving and disingenuous.
It's Mac's World here on a Tuesday afternoon. Congressman Steve King just here in the studio. He's gone now. He's on his way to Grinnell. I would strongly encourage you to check out the second hour of the show today with Congressman King. It was fast moving. We had several breaking stories, including Ben Carson has postponed all of his campaign events this afternoon and early tomorrow because some staffers of his was in a bad car accident. They were rushed to Omaha, the hospital. This was down by Atlantic. And Carson's a doctor, and he wanted to go up there and see what he could do. How bold can you be? Also, whatever you think of her, Sarah Palin holds weight with the Tea Party. Not only just in Iowa. Don't see this endorsement that Sarah Palin gave to Donald Trump today just as something for Iowa. She is the queen of the Tea Party. She has been relentless in supporting their causes since the day the Tea Party started how many years ago. Sarah Palin today came out and said, Trump's my man. That is going to echo not only across the caucuses in Iowa, but across the United States as a whole.
Yes, exactly right, Mac. And we're wrapping it up now, and I've got your earplugs so you can't hear the music. It's starting up now.
But it is starting. All right. Well, I want to thank you, Tom Coates, for being here today. Bob Montserrat, the Cat in the Hat, watching the chat, and our new Service Legends Truth Text Talk line at 809-0993. Frank did a great job producing today. I'm J. Michael McCoy. Hang on, guys. Whether you like politics in Iowa or not, we're just about at the top of the hill, and the big roller coaster is going straight down, and we're all going to hold up our hands and scream. We are 2 weeks away from a history-making Iowa caucus right here in the great state of Iowa. I'm J. Michael McCoy. If I haven't told you lately, thanks for listening. And remember, tonight, forgive somebody, because as you forgive, you shall be forgiven. I'll see you in church.